Have you ever wished to be someone completely unshakable? Someone who doesn't crumble under criticism, who laughs off rejection, who walks through betrayal untouched? Perhaps you've dreamed of that moment, the day when that silent pain finally stops eating you alive from the inside, the anguish that haunts you even when you're smiling on the surface. Maybe you're exhausted from performing strength for everyone, from maintaining an image that demands perfection every single second. All you want, deep down, is permission to rest, just for a moment, to stop being untouchable. But here's what nobody has had the courage to tell you. As long as you try to avoid pain, it will control you. As long as you numb yourself, as long as you hide and protect yourself, you remain a prisoner, enslaved to every harsh word, every disappointment, every silence that cuts through you. And this isn't weakness. This is the human condition. The only difference is that some people pretend better than others. Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds in depth psychology, said something that changes everything. We are not what happens to us, but what we choose to become. And that's where the key lies. True strength isn't about shielding yourself from the world. It's not about becoming cold, indifferent, or untouchable. It's about integration, bringing to light everything that currently affects you in the darkness. Because real strength isn't the absence of pain. It's knowing who you are, even when you're bleeding. If you've made it this far, it's not by accident. This video is for you, the ones tired of hurting yourself with everything and everyone. The ones who feel powerless, as if other people hold a power over you that you don't even understand. The ones who smile in public but cry in private. The ones who've built such thick walls that even you can't find your way through them anymore. I want to show you it doesn't have to be this way. But for that to happen, you'll have to face some truths that might hurt. Truths about yourself. Truths about why you suffer. Truths about the patterns you keep repeating. And perhaps for the first time, that pain will set you free. If this message is resonating with you right now, hit that subscribe button, because the journey we're about to take together requires commitment, and I'll be here to guide you through every step. Let's do this. You believe what hurts you comes from outside, from other people's actions, from words poorly chosen, from abandonments you didn't see coming, from betrayals that blindsided you. But here's the brutal truth. None of that has the power to hurt you unless there's already an open wound inside. What wounds you isn't what others do. It's what their actions activate within you. It's the story you tell yourself about it. It's the old trauma you've never addressed. It's the emptiness you've learned to mask, with strength, with pride, with that desperate need to appear fine. Jung showed us something profound. The pain we feel facing the external world is merely a reflection of what hasn't yet been integrated within. It's like a mirror. When you look outside and see pain, you're actually seeing something that exists inside you first. That's why some people can walk through devastation and remain clear-minded, while others shatter over a single comment. That's why rejection destroys some, while it barely touches others. It's not about what happens. It's about where it hits you. It's about what's already broken inside, waiting to be triggered. And here comes an uncomfortable truth you need to hear. You still suffer so much because deep down, you still believe you can control how the world treats you. You're still trying to be good enough, smart enough, strong enough, understanding enough, as if that guarantees nobody will hurt you. You think if you just do everything right, if you just become perfect, if you just earn enough love and approval, then finally you'll be safe. But control is an illusion. As long as you cling to it, you live in constant tension, trying to predict the unpredictable, trying to avoid the inevitable, trying to manage chaos with the tools of reason when chaos doesn't follow reason. Your freedom begins the moment you understand this. Everything that comes from outside only has power if it finds an echo within you. That comment only hurts if there's a wound it touches. That rejection only destroys if you've already rejected yourself. That abandonment only breaks you if you believe you deserve to be abandoned. And that's exactly where the real battlefield lies. Not out there, in here. In the unconscious, in what you cannot see, do not understand, and therefore cannot master. This is the territory we must explore together. The greatest lie you've ever been told is that you're in control of your life. Wake up. You're not. Not as long as you're living on autopilot, reacting without knowing why, feeling without understanding where it comes from, making decisions that you later sabotage yourself in executing. You move through life like you're half asleep, responding to triggers you don't even recognize, playing out scripts you didn't consciously write. Carl Jung was crystal clear about this. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And that's exactly what's happening to you right now. The pain that erupts without warning, the anger that explodes out of nowhere, the sadness that invades you without explanation. None of this is random. These are messages. Messages from parts of you that have been forgotten, ignored, buried deep beneath layers of denial and distraction. Jung called this dark territory the unconscious. And it's not some vague cloud of thoughts. It's an active force. An entire system of memories, trauma, desires, and fears that you refuse to face, but that continue to dictate what you feel and how you act. It's like a person living in your basement, pulling strings, and you're wondering why you keep moving in ways you don't understand. That's why certain words destroy you, while they roll off others' backs, because those words touch sensitive points within you that are still alive and bleeding. And if they're alive, it's because you've never confronted them. You've only shoved them under the psychological carpet. And now you keep tripping over them, again and again, in different forms, different relationships, different circumstances. Jung said it clearly, we cannot change anything until we accept it. Condemnation does not liberate, it oppresses. And what have you been doing? Judging yourself, repressing yourself, silencing yourself, telling yourself to be stronger, to get over it, to move on, as if that would solve anything. As if willpower and determination could force your unconscious to comply with your conscious wishes. The truth is this: the unconscious doesn't disappear because you ignore it. It only finds more dangerous ways to manifest. It becomes more creative, more destructive, more insidious in how it operates. In relationships, you repeat. In patterns of self-sabotage, you cannot break. In anxieties and fears that rise exactly when everything seems to be going well. It's not bad luck. It's not coincidence. It's your unconscious trying to wake you up, but you insist on sleeping. So here's the real question. Do you want to stop being hurt? Then stop running from what's inside you. Because as long as you don't know you're unconscious, you're a puppet of your own emotions. And the more you try to protect yourself from external pain, the more vulnerable you become to internal pain. You're fighting the wrong enemy on the wrong battlefield. But there is a way out. And it's not in defending yourself. It's in integrating yourself. It's in turning around and facing what you've been running from. Because becoming untouchable isn't an act of resistance. It's an act of deep knowledge. It's understanding yourself so completely that nothing external can shake your foundation. Most people believe the only way to avoid getting hurt is by closing themselves off completely. They build walls, they create masks, they develop emotional armor. They say things like, I don't care anymore, nothing gets to me, I'm invulnerable. But inside, they're still bleeding, still corroding, still dying slowly from the inside out. Because the problem was never about feeling. The problem is not knowing what you're feeling and why. The problem is disconnection from yourself. And that only happens to those who don't know themselves, who've been running so long they've forgotten who they were running from. Jung was precise. Know all the theories, master all the techniques, but when touching a human soul, be just another human soul. That human soul you insist on hiding behind a strong and vulnerable, controlled character, it's screaming to be seen. It's crying out for recognition. It's exhausted from the performance. Here's what you need to understand. Emotional strength has nothing to do with being cold. It has nothing to do with ignoring pain, avoiding conflict, or pretending not to care. It has everything to do with integrating, accepting, and bringing to light everything you've buried in the dark. Real strength is warm, it's alive, it's vulnerable and powerful at the same time. You don't become untouchable by creating a barrier between yourself and the world. You become untouchable when you realize that no one can touch what's already been embraced within you. When you've already looked at your wound, acknowledged it, held it with compassion, there's nothing left for external circumstance to wound. When you integrate your shadows, your fears, your flaws, your insecurities, you stop reacting to everything. You observe. You choose. You're no longer an emotional puppet dancing to music you didn't choose. You become the author of your own responses. And that's true freedom. Jung called this process individuation, the process of becoming who you really are, not what others expect, not what you thought you should be to gain acceptance, not the version of yourself you constructed for survival, but what emerges from within. From the meeting of light and shadow, between ego and unconscious, between who you were told to be and who you actually are beneath all the layers. Individuation isn't about perfection, Jung said. It's about integration. You don't need to become a better person. You just need to become whole. Whole means including everything. The light and the dark, the strength and the weakness, the noble and the shameful. All of it together, integrated into one unified being. And here's the secret nobody told you. The more you run from pain, the more it chases you. The more you try not to be affected, the more fragile you become. It's counterintuitive, but it's true. The fortress you build to protect yourself becomes your prison. But when you face your own wounds, when you accept who you are, with everything beautiful and ugly, noble and shameful, nothing outside has the power to dismantle you. You've already dismantled yourself and put yourself back together on your own terms. This path requires courage, though. The courage to look within when looking inward is terrifying. The courage to abandon your masks when those masks have protected you for so long. The courage to feel when feeling has only brought you pain before. Because it's precisely in pain that the key to true transformation is hidden. Not in avoiding it, not in transcending it, but in moving through it consciously. Since childhood, you learned to hate pain. You were taught that suffering is weakness, that crying is a waste, that feeling too deeply makes you vulnerable. And so you began to run, to avoid, to deny, to numb, to distract. But the more you flee from suffering, the more it chases you. And the worst part? It changes form. It disguises itself as anxiety, anger, apathy, boredom, self-destructive impulses you can't even trace. You don't even recognize it as pain anymore. You think it's just who you are. Ignored pain doesn't disappear. It digs tunnels inside you, creating networks of suffering you navigate unconsciously. Until one day, without warning, everything collapses. A relationship ends. Your body breaks down. Your mind fragments, and you wonder why. But Jung saw suffering completely differently. He understood that pain is the messenger of the soul, the alarm of the unconscious, the language your truest self uses to get your attention when you won't listen any other way. Pain is trying to communicate something essential. He said, "Depression is like a lady in black. If she appears, don't push her away. Invite her to sit down, offer her a coffee, and listen to what she has to say." But you don't listen. You silence yourself. You distract yourself. You numb yourself with work, with entertainment, with substances. You do everything to avoid looking at what really matters. What is this pain trying to show you? What is it asking of you? Here's the truth. Suffering hurts so much because you're still at war with yourself. There's still a part of you wanting to grow while another part wants everything to stay the same. Something inside you cries out for transformation. But your ego, accustomed to control, accustomed to the familiar pain of staying small, tries to suffocate that call. And it's in this internal conflict, this civil war within your own psyche, that pain is born. Because change hurts. Growth hurts. Letting go of old beliefs hurts. Cutting toxic ties hurts. Allowing what no longer serves you to die. All of this is a mourning, an internal death, and rebirth. You're literally killing the person you used to be so someone new can emerge. But here's what most people miss. It's precisely in this space of ruin that something new can be born. In the rubble of who you were lies the foundation for who you could become. When everything in you is deconstructed, when certainties crumble, when pain lays bare your vulnerability, you can finally see who you really are. Without the layers of protection, without the performance, without the mask that's become so familiar you forgot it was a mask. And at that exact moment, suffering becomes sacred, because it brings you to your knees before the only thing that can set you free. Yourself, your own courage, your own willingness to look, your own capacity to integrate and transform. Jung understood this deeply. He knew that suffering isn't a failure of the system, it's part of the process. Pain isn't the end of the road. It's the beginning of the journey toward individuation. It's the price of becoming real. The problem is that most people give up before crossing that dark valley. They flee, they distract themselves. They return to the surface, choosing the familiar ache of their old prison over the uncertainty of freedom. They choose comfort over truth. But not you. If you've made it this far, you're ready to cross. Few people have the courage to begin the journey of individuation. Even fewer have the courage to complete it, because this path doesn't promise comfort. It doesn't offer guarantees. It doesn't protect your ego. It destroys it. Jung called individuation the process of becoming who you are. But above all, this means unlearning what you think you are. And that hurts more than any external rejection because it's internal. It's the loss of identity itself, because you start to realize that much of what defined you until now was an illusion, a story you told yourself, a character you played so long you forgot it was a performance. You are not your achievements. You are not your traumas. You are not the image you constructed to be loved, respected, or admired. All of that was what you created to survive. But surviving isn't living. And individuation is life's call beyond survival. It's the invitation to actually live. Individuation begins when the unconscious pushes everything that's been repressed, hidden, and distorted to the surface. It requires the dissolution of the persona. Jung wrote, "For it is merely a mask of collective convenience." In other words, you'll need to tear off your own skin to discover what lies beneath. You'll need to be willing to be seen in your rawness. And it's in this process that you truly become untouchable. Not because nothing affects you anymore, but because you've already gone through the fire. You've faced your monsters. You've looked into the eyes of your shame, your neediness, your rage, your desperation, and said, "I see you, and you no longer control me." It's this internal clarity, this lucidity in the face of your own darkness, that gives you a strength that doesn't depend on approval, recognition, or control. You're no longer seeking validation from outside because you've given it to yourself. You no longer need to be loved by everyone. You no longer need to win every argument. You no longer need to appear strong because you know who you are, and no one can take that away from you. You're anchored in something deeper than opinion. True emotional armor isn't a shell. It's a core. It's the integration of all your parts into a center of consciousness that remains unshaken in the face of storms. It's wholeness. You may feel pain, but it doesn't break you. You may be hurt, but you don't lose yourself. Because you've stopped being reactive and have become whole. You've stopped living on the surface and have begun to inhabit the depths where nothing can reach you without your permission. But this depth comes at a price: loneliness. Not because you'll be alone, but because few can accompany you on this journey. Most are still trapped on the surface, in masks, in the fear of feeling. And when you begin to free yourself, you inevitably distance yourself from them. But this distancing isn't rejection, it's maturation. It's natural. You don't distance yourself out of pride or judgment. You distance yourself because you no longer fit where you once hid. You've outgrown the space. where others remain trapped. Now that you've made it this far, something needs to be said very clearly. Nothing, absolutely nothing, will shield you from external suffering if you remain unconscious of what happens within you. Defenses don't work. Avoidance doesn't work. Positive thinking doesn't work. The words will continue to hurt. The rejections will continue to sting. The losses will keep bringing you down until you awaken, until you turn inward, until you face what you've been running from. An awakening isn't a magical moment. It's a daily choice. It's looking within even when it hurts. It's taking responsibility for everything you feel without blaming others, the past, or fate anymore. It's becoming the author of your own story instead of a victim of circumstances. Carl Jung said it perfectly. What you resist persists. What you accept transforms. This is the law of the psyche. This is how transformation actually happens. You've spent your whole life resisting, running from the fear of not being enough, from the emptiness of rejection, from the pain of loneliness, from the anguish of not feeling seen. But what did you do with all of that resistance? You hid. You silenced yourself. You tried to control everything. You tried to be perfect. You tried to be strong. And all of this brought you here. Exhausted. Tired of fighting the world and yourself. Ready for something different. But now you know, true emotional immunity isn't hardness. It's clarity. It's not about creating armor. It's about expanding your awareness. Because when you understand your triggers, your patterns, your wounds, the actions of others lose their power to destroy you. You see them clearly. You respond consciously. You still feel, but you don't drown. You still suffer, but you don't lose yourself. And that changes everything. That's the difference between someone who is broken by life and someone who is deepened by it. What shields you isn't protecting yourself from life. It's diving into it deeply. It's swimming down to the depths instead of paddling on the surface, where every wave threatens to capsize you. Those who live on the surface get hurt by any wave, but those who dive know that there's silence, stability, and power down below. And that's where you're headed. That's where your real journey begins. When you start to live from that place, from integration, presence, acceptance, the world may try to knock you down, but it no longer finds where to hit you. You've become unshakable not through resistance but through acceptance, not through armor but through awareness. If this video touched you in some way, if something within you has awakened, write it in the comments. I choose awareness. Let's start a movement. A movement of people who no longer want to survive by pretending to be strong, but to live with truth, to live authentically, to live consciously. And don't forget, the next video is also part of this journey. It's important. You need to keep going. You need to keep looking inward. You need to keep transforming. Because real transformation only begins when you don't stop at the first step. See you there.